talk?
Yeah, what's up?
Cause you're my favorite girl. You make my simple come on. Cause you're my favorite girl.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to Love Language Podcast Lola.
Episode 5.
I was just thinking the other day, Jess, so that we didn't even celebrate like our 2 month anniversary.
I was thinking we'll celebrate like 6 months. Like 2 months is what? Nothing. 2 months is a situationship, bro.
Okay. 6 months is relationship.
Not at all. Even 1 year can be situationship.
When does it get serious for us?
When you say let's delete the apps now together.
Anyway.
Uh, but what have you been up to this week?
I actually started LA Climate Week has started here. So
Nice.
I was busy with that. I am working on that. So it was a little hectic for me.
Yeah.
What about you?
Weekend was really gloomy. Just been bed rotting, but I finished Adolescence after a
Finally.
very long time. Yeah, I know you
Fine.
watched it, but the thing is, I'm a very fast watcher. Like difficult shows, I'm a very fast watcher.
I also finished it. What? We watched. We started it in the evening or something, and we finished it the next afternoon.
Yeah. So I did that over the weekend. A lot of thoughts, a lot of interesting sort of ideas came to my mind, and then I started reading a lot of the things that people have been posting. I didn't want to read anything before I watched the show. I wanted to have like this raw experience of just getting to know what it is and figuring out what's in it. But no, tell me your immediate thoughts, because I feel like my immediate thoughts are a bit different from what I was reading on online. I know the Guardian posted a bunch. I know there are a lot of TikTok reviews about it.
So I'm pursuing digital communications, right? At USC. And so I'm very, very interested and intrigued. Generally, also even before that, very interested in the role of digital. Like the name of my degree is actually digital social media, right? So I am very intrigued by the role of social media, the digital landscape on our consumption habits, on the trends, on how people are shaped, and then, of course, the youth, right? Even the way parenting is affected. Very, very interesting theme that I personally explored a lot. So for me, as soon as adolescence came, like you know how I am. I'm not someone who hops onto trends or who watches things just because it's popular, right? But it's so instantly like hit my raw nerve that I had to just like watch it. And man, what a show! Like, what a show. The lead actor, who's actually the producer and who portrays the father in that, Stephen Graham, I just fell in love with him. Like, and the whole way in which, without telling much, they try to convey this topic that is so all pervasive, like we all can connect to it. So it did not only top the UK charts, it topped American charts, it topped Indian charts. So, sort of universal resonance that it had. I cried after watching it. I was extremely moved by it.
I know like a lot of people were really moved by, Adolescence. I talked to you after I watched it. I talked to a bunch of my other friends, all of whom are were very interested in like the sociocultural pop culture and all of that around young people, our generation, and a lot of them were really moved. I wasn't as moved by the show. Of course, I think it was a great show. I think it was a very relevant show, is a very relevant show. But just a few like thoughts before we like unpack all of this in more detail. One is that I saw that the UK government is planning to propose this show be watched by students in middle school, and boys and girls and students in schools watch this. I don't think that's a good idea. One. And let me know what you think about this. I generally think that there's a lot of subtext in the show. There's a lot of nuances to what the meaning is, right? Like what you were saying, there's
Yeah,
so much. It's a great show, but
yeah,
there are a lot of nuances. And even when I was discussing with you, like you picked up on certain things, probably because of your background, your biases. I picked up on certain things because of my background, my biases, which
yeah,
obviously that's the effect of art, right? We interpret it
exactly.
in different ways. And I think for younger students, and as someone who's worked with younger students through my line of work in Nepal, it does help to give a more, yes, creative but slightly more straightforward sort of nudge to conversation. So creative side helps, but so much subtext and so much nuances might not make you achieve what you're trying to achieve, or push the conversation in the right direction. Second, I don't know. I wasn't as moved, and I'm someone who cries and feels so much during shows. I wasn't as moved, but when I reflected on what was happening, I think for me, it was more like a lot of these conversations that we're seeing in law school. I've done these courses. Maybe it's become so normalized in the consumption of cases like these, in the consumption of like criminal law, children and the law, family law. These are all things I specialized in during law school. So I think for me, it was also like it felt more like, okay, I'm going to take this as a course conversation more than a form of art. And perhaps that's my own lacking, that I don't know how to appreciate art in the way it's supposed to be.
No, I feel that is the whole part. That was the whole process, right? Like, I feel it was so open ended that, and you are not the only one. Like, a lot of people were not moved by it, and a lot of people were like, I was sobbing by the end of it. And it really moved me, and it is not because I have not been exposed to it. So I mean, yeah, there could be multiple reasons, but I have also been imposed to intimate violence and things like that. Like, I have seen very gruesome cases of human violence, and but still, I don't know. For me, I consumed it like a movie. I consumed it like, like a work of fiction that sort of touched things that I think about really often, and the way the acting was done really moved me. But coming to your point of it gaining so much prominence that it was then discussed in the UK Parliament, it was debated upon, and the UK Prime Minister actually went on to say that it should be shown in schools. I agree with you. Like, I don't think this is of course, a lot of parents watched it with their kids. It was something that a lot of parents watched it with their kids. That is a very different thing, because then you have your parents answering questions, or I don't know, you're bonding over this. It's a conversation starter in a household. That's different. But actually making it part of an educational curriculum, I don't think it was ever made with that intention to do that, right? It was made for, by the end of it, for entertainment, right? With entertainment for a cause. I just feel a lot of boys might not resonate with this, right? Like, they won't be able to, there are no answers in this, in the series, right? So when the boys who are so young, some not even exposed to these realities, there can be a thing, right? They might just go around looking for answers, and this might just leave them more confused, you know what I mean? And we don't want to do that.
And I think the answer is not just for young boys, but also for parents and the psychologists or the psychiatrists, the teachers, the police. No one had answers to what was going on. In fact, most of the adults were unaware to the extent to which the digital sphere of Manosphere, as it's called, has taken over the lives of young people. And I think maybe it was even lesser during our time, because when we were in the 8th grade, ninth grade, yes, social media was coming up, but the consumption wasn't as high. So maybe even we don't understand the extent to which it started consuming the lives. I was reading up on it, and how the radicalization within the manosphere is called a drip, drip, drip radicalization. So it's not like someone's coming to you and being like, hey, be a
Yeah,
misogynist, or hey, you worship Andrew Tate. It really is interesting. It's how in gaming, gaming rooms, how young people are part of these gaming rooms where you can interact with other people. They are sort of recruited in these places. A lot of websites which sell protein powders for bodybuilders.
exactly. Workout videos are actually one of the, I was so intrigued by that. Like the first forms of initiation to Manosphere.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? You and I are probably not in any of these platforms. I'm not on a, I'm like, what are we on Chloe Ting's workout platform, where there's no ad for these, right? They're not recruiting, women sort of focused groups, but they are looking at very specific young boys, quote unquote, masculine spheres. And I think that's the scary part. Like, how much do you monitor? How do you monitor, if at all? And I think one thing that really struck me was, and tell me if you picked up on this, was about one aspect of this whole conversation is what was happening in his room when the door was closed, in Jamie's room when the door was closed. The second thing that most traditional conversations, which the psychiatrist focused on, which the father focused on, was his role in that sort of, the absentee father or just the parent's role in raising this child. But what I really picked up on was when the police went to the school, there was so much normalization of verbal violence, whether to the teachers, there was normalization of sexism. There were students saying, fuck you, bitch, to a teacher, but on the face of it saying, hello, miss. Then there was that instance where the teacher forgot to introduce the female police officer, but then, realized she did that, then went and introduced. So it's like, you escape your room and your digital space to go to your family, you escape both of those areas to go to school. But if all three of them in some portions are feeding you in their own ways aspects of drip 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 radicalization, then what? Where is the answer to it?
No, you're right. And so, algorithm is a very dangerous thing, Jesso. Today, I can have a conversation with my parents or my partner about an insecurity that I have, which anyone can have, right? Like, I mean, growing up, we were insecure about our bodies, or we were exploring sex and conversations around that. So we would go to different resources to get that, right? Now, what is our intention? Our intention is nothing. It's coming from a sense of oblivion that we are approaching this, right? So I'm sure young boys, I mean, you cannot deny it that they do access things. They are sort of understanding the world around them. They're having conversations. But what is dangerous is the way the algorithm picks it and understands, you know, and targets, and understands, and then begins to target those demographics or those sections, and actually becomes intelligent enough to say that, what, this guy has this search history. And they can be benign things, like we're saying, like workout and protein powder, or how do I look more attractive to women, like benign searches, and actually mix it all up to begin to show toxic advertisements.
So one of the sort of more radical portions of this algorithm is, the conversation around Andrew Tate. I know a lot of articles which were reviewing adolescents talked about Andrew Tate, but Andrew Tate is a symptom of the process. He's a product of the process. I was looking at, his statistics on this Hustlers University. Basically, he has this platform where he brings in young people to subscribe for a $40 fees on how to make more money, how to become a better hustler, how to get power, how to get money. And imagine the revenue he's making. He had, at some point, he had 200,000 subscribers who were paying $40 a month. That's a year, $96 million for Andrew Tate. So he's making money in this process. He's gaining fame in this process. But in the process, he's also telling young boys about power, about money. And I think that was so interesting to me, that he used money as a way to lure people, like hustling culture, making more money as a way to
And then
lure people,
linking that.
and linking that, because that itself is one of the things that we saw in adolescence. Is, we when the psychiatrist is questioning him, he's like, yeah, I get beaten up by my classmates, they spat on me. And then he takes that anger and takes that humiliation and shame, and then goes and projects it on Katie. right? It's very interesting because every socioeconomic psychologist, psychiatrist who's looking at this effect is saying violence is born out of humiliation and shame. Like historically, it's always born out of humiliation and shame. And the sort of toxic masculinity or this manosphere, what it's attempting to do is take away this humiliation and shame with power, money, bodybuilding, any any aspect which could be a very normal process of the society. But if you're told, well, this is how you're going to get all of that that has been taken from you back, anyone would subscribe to a $40 fees to be like, I want to be a millionaire by the end of this year and, be more approachable, be more liked in society, have better status in society.
I want to understand. So I was talking to Niket. Niket is my brother, right? And after I watched Adolescence, I took it so personally, actually. It became very personal for me, this whole thing. And it took me to a very deep space where then I like sort of watched everything. I sort of reflected upon everything in my upbringing, in my interactions in school, at home, with my brother. I'm I'm an older sister. I don't only have Niket, I have two other younger brothers who are my first cousins who are as close to me. So just like my role as an older sister and things like that. And I spoke to Niket and I was like, what is your algorithm like? So I know this for a fact. I have lots of guy friends, right? That Instagram promotes women, scantily clad women, women sort of, being provocative and seductive, boobs, breasts, and ass and all that is just automatically more prominently showcased in the explore page of men versus women. And I have seen that. Like, I've seen that with my friends and partner and with Niket and everything. And I was like, how do you, like, does this happen to you? I spoke to him and he was like, my page is like full of memes and comedy and workout and this and that. So I was like, but do you get shown this stuff? And he was like, yeah, a lot of times on YouTube, I'm doing like a general search and I would get like ads about being, an escort ad or an ad about like those kind of things. And I found a way to like beat the algorithm. But not many people can do that. In our podcast, like right now in our episode, let's dive deep into like the men and the people who actually have sort of been able to beat the pressure and look at it constructively. But what about those who cannot? And it is so easy to not be able to beat that, man. And nowadays, the modern parenting also has a very important role in that.
But I don't think it's about, what do you mean by beating the pressure? Like, what do you mean beating the algorithm? Because we are also subjected to that. I get more videos. I'm a straight woman who gets more videos of women who are scantily dressed than men who are scantily dressed on my Instagram.
Jesselina, you getting it at 29 versus a boy getting it at 15, at 14, at 13, at 12. It's very different.
No,
And
no.
what kind
What do you mean by beating the algorithm?
beating the algorithm means that you reject that content. You don't engage with that content. You don't participate with that content. You sort of, Instagram has these options where if it begins to show you certain videos or certain content, there are these three dots where you go back and you say, please do not show me this content again. Having the willpower and the discretion to actually do that. But how many people are able to do that? Like, if Andrew Tate comes today on my feed, I will probably be like, do not show me this content. But not many people will do that. They will indulge in it. I have had friends who've indulged in it, who've actually listened to Andrew Tate in and out and reasoned with him.
So here's the thing. One, I don't think there is enough conversation about Andrew Tate being problematic in these younger spaces. I was talking to a few volunteers who are high schoolers for the organization that I co-run, Pat to Go. They're high schoolers here, and I just wanted to get a sense of what's going on, even beyond algorithm. What is going on within your schools? Are these conversations about like gender equality, respect, are these happening within the schools? And one of them, very interestingly, she's in this school which is specialized, high school which is specialized for tech. there is such a focus on tech, Anayata. There is so much focus on tech, whether in the US or even in now South Asia. These conversations about making sure our children know how to code more than when we were in school. Computer science was like an optional course, which maybe it shouldn't have been. Maybe we should have been given that as a mandatory course in the long run, right? But the push for tech, and the push for tech which might not be responsible tech, if you're constantly talking about machine learning, tech, but you're not talking about humanity, human rights, gender rights, the socioeconomic and disproportionate impact of tech, if you don't take this into account, we are seeing coding biases. We are seeing algorithms which are biased against race, biased against gender. So what I'm trying to say is, when we're talking about beating the algorithm, is that a fair point to start young people who might not be aware, or should we take a step back and start from a much further place of starting the tech?
No, I completely agree. And so I'm not, that's what I'm trying to say, right? That it's of course not fair. Like today, I have the discretion to do that, right? And of course, it has to be a mixture. It has to be a mixture of the people who are actually creating, who are shaping the future, which is tech, which is AI. What kind of people are you recruiting into this? What kind of training are you giving them? What kind of skilling? And I agree with you. There isn't much emphasis on bringing the responsible frameworks into the teaching and the skilling process is very, very important to do that. But along with that, what is happening at home also is something that I'm just not able to navigate. Like, this is a question that I'm not able to understand, that how is it that my brother escaped from it. I do not come from a perfect family, Jesselina. I don't. My parents have been very nice human beings. They have raised us well, very grateful to them. But it isn't that they haven't had their challenges. It isn't that we haven't had challenges in the society that we have grown up in. Growing up in a small town, being around uncles and aunts, we have seen problematic behavior. We have seen kids who have imbibed that problematic behavior also. How have we escaped it? How have we built that resilience to escape it and choose a more constructive way of handling it rather than a destructive way to handle it? Is my question. Is something that we need to tap into, I feel.
Uh, no, I because you brought in Niket, I want to bring in the conversation about my younger brother Virajit. By the way, to our listeners, they were both of them were supposed to be here today having this conversation with us. They have just not stuck to our timeline, so we were like, please get lost. Um, but no, so one of the conversations, of course, like we very critically look at our upbringing in terms of, yes, our parents, that's sort of nature. What all have we imbibed from our parents? Are there characteristics of our parents that we want or don't want? And what are we actively keeping with ourselves? And what are we actively saying, okay, this is not a characteristic we want? That's a conversation that my brother and I have very often. Another thing that, when we were talking about, and what I've seen be helpful for him, is he's had a lot of friends who are girls, and I feel like women or girls check men also, even at a younger age. And boys are not checking themselves. They'll just laugh off the joke, unless it's gonna be super extreme, where now the culture has become to check people. But I feel like younger girls also, and girls of our age, remember when some of our guy friends are having a little off taste conversations, we're like, what the hell? Like, we're just like, can you please take that back? And I feel like, one, having friends who are girls around you is such an important quality. I genuinely believe men who have friends who are girls, who can vouch for a man objectively and be like, yes, he might, like, mess up, but objectively he seems to be a decent human being. I feel that's a very important quality. And I know that both Niket and Virajit have had girls who are friends.
Yeah.
Maybe our influence also, I don't know, older sisters and younger brothers. I don't know, that constant conversation about, checking them, because there have been times when they've been problematic, or like
Yeah.
any other person.
I'll tell you a small incident. Niket had, and he picked it up from you know who. So I had a help at home. He was our driver, basically our chauffeur, and but a very integral part of our family, Raja Bhaiya. And generally we grew up with a lot of domestic help that very nice, but I love them. But then of course they came from a certain segment from rural India where women driving was considered like almost a joke, right? So I remember, and my mom never drove. So Niket grew up seeing those things, that every time I would sit down in the car or something, like, all these people, all the helps at home and all would like tease me or be like, chalo, tum sit at the back, and either sit at the back. But with Niket, it was like, you should start learning to drive quickly. You should start learning, now it's like at 7, 8, he was like, okay, now you better start learning. And everyone was like collectively trying to teach him. With me, it was more of a protectionist thing, that it's okay, it's fine, don't. You're gonna mess up, you're gonna run into an accident. I saw him pick these things up, and when he was 15, 16, 14, 15, whatever, I saw him having this very chauvinistic attitude that every time there would be an accident in the road, he would be like, must be a female driver. Every time, like, he would have to honk more than twice, he'd be like, is a girl driving or what? I saw these statements coming in. And Jesselina, I checked him and I checked him and I checked him and I checked him in every conversation. It's a very small incident, but I remember, if it even if it was a festival, it was a happy thing, at the cost of being one of those people who a party pooper, I checked him till the time he stopped doing it. And I feel that was my achievement.
I'll tell you something, and I want to say this because I want to objectively look at the situation, because my mother had this conversation with me. I don't even think I've told you this. So my mother drives, my father drives. They were both very adamant on both of us learning how to drive. So very different from your situation, but the jokes were the same. Anytime there'd be an accident, my dad would make a joke. Oh, must be a woman driver. My mom would get irritated, scream at him. At some point of those jokes, I had normalized it. Once there was an accident in Kathmandu, I must have been in like class 6 or 7 or 8. You know what I said? I said, was that a woman driver? And I think that's when my parents realized, okay, the joke wasn't a joke at home. It has infiltrated at some point, and like even women can internalize this misogyny and this sexism. It's not just boys; it's also women who can internalize and then pass it on, right? And I remember my mom having this conversation with me and her being like, "Listen, that's not right for you to say. One, you're a woman, but even if you are not a woman, it's not correct for you to say. Bad driving is not gendered. It could be anyone. In fact, road rage is seen, unfortunately, more in men when you look at the statistics." And that's when I realized even the slightest of jokes can get internalized when you stop questioning it. And I think that's what I wanted to talk about, the whole nature versus nurture aspect in adolescence. And I come back to adolescence because it's I feel like a lot of questions came from that. And one of the things was, how have they raised a daughter who is different and a son who is different, right? Because you're coming from the same two families, maybe your economic status in 4 or 5 years change, so that can impact how children are being raised. But here's the thing, when the psychiatrist was constantly going back to the question of, do you respect your father? Does your father respect your mom? Does your father respect his father? And when the father looked back and said, my father used to hit me and he raised me to be a decent human being. I've never hit my son. How come he turned out like this? I thought not hitting him, not abusing him would make him an even better person. So I think there's this conversation about nature and nurture, and a lot of scientists have been looking at this. Stanford, who conducted this experiment with chimpanzees, to look at, is it testosterone that is driving male violence. So what the scientists did, very interesting. They took five monkeys with five varying levels of testosterone. So number one, monkey number one had highest, two had second highest, three had third highest, and same way five monkeys. They put them in a cage. They did see that monkeys with higher testosterone, number one beat number two beat number three beat number four beat number five. So there was this hierarchy formed in the cage. They took monkey three out, put him with more testosterone, higher than monkey one, and put him back in the cage. But this time, monkey 3, even though he has higher testosterone than monkey 1 and 2, did not go and beat up monkey 1 and 2. It only beat up monkey 3 and 4. So, what they were trying to say is that yes, it is nature, but also nurture and structures of society which have already been established. In that monkey's mind, it was like, well, there's already hierarchy formed. I still feel more superior than monkey 4 and 5, so I'm going to go beat them up. So what they were like, testosterone is not the cause of violence. It may be an enabler, but it's not the cause of violence. So I think that is a conversation we need to have with young boys, that anger and rage, first of all, is an emotional outburst. To say that women are only emotional is not correct. Anger is an emotional outburst, and we need to look at more constructive ways of dealing with our emotions.
Also feel at a very young age boxing emotions as manly emotions or womanly emotions is wrong. I genuinely feel. Yesterday there was this boy and 2-year-old toddler. I was at Climate Week yesterday, and he was with his mom, a lesbian couple, and a child. And he was, there was a lot of noise, a lot of clutter, and he was a little timid and wanting the comfort of his mother all the time. And she comes to me and she goes like, oh my god, my son, he's such a dreamy Piscean. I did not like this comment. I genuinely was like, first of all, it's a very LA thing to do, and second, that why are you boxing? What if tomorrow he wants to be an outgoing Virgo, for example? I'm just saying, how are you boxing? Even growing up, if girls cried, or if we felt romance, or if we felt we had crushes or things like that, it was always like, oh, she's a girl, girls. And boys were more like, oh my god, he's going to beat him up and go and box him and go and kick him. Like, this boxing of emotions then makes, at a very early age, you group boys and girls into the emotions that you need to identify and how you need to tap. So many times I have conversations with my boys, such sensitive people. I have four best friends, four really, really close. All of them have grown up together, that group. And I am their friend, right? And all of them have individually gone through emotional turbulence, breakups, problems with their parents at home, all these problems that I have had at home. Okay. And I have, my first reaction is, if I have this problem, I'm going to go to my childhood best friend and talk, right? I'm going to come to you and talk, and you will be able to understand because whatever. And my first reaction is, why don't you go to Y and talk about it? And he's like, oh, we just played a game and we came back and it's fine. And to us, they will come and like talk and cry and be vulnerable, And that is what the problem is, and that is what structurally is wrong. Like, you have to make it all right for girls to show aggression, and and get them and teach them how to manage it constructively, and for boys to learn how to be emotional and deal with it constructively, you know and you need to get boys and girls to mix up. I just feel that never that so rarely happens. You from the beginning differentiate and make so much pink and blue out of the interactions that it's much later at a stage that they actually begin to talk to each other.
Yeah. Even about like, so Patago, the organization that I co-run, one of the very early decisions that we took when we said that we were going to have interactive dialogues with young boys and girls about periods was that we're going to make sure both boys and girls are part of this conversation. Every school that we reached out to in the initial stage, even the sort of private, well-known schools in Kathmandu, they're like, why do boys need to have this conversation? You just have it with the girls. And it is when we started having the conversation with the boys and make that environment better, and also have like a male teacher to make sure that they are comfortable sharing their responses, and that sharing their questions and everything. And when we started having these conversations, and I thought so many people ask us, oh, it must have been such a challenge. Young people are like sponges. They're so impressionable, both for the good and the bad. But for the good, if you're able to take that constructively through creative means, have those conversations. We showed the vending machine, which was basically the technology that got them excited about these conversations. They were willing to learn. They learned what a pad was. They learned how to make pads. They learned how periods happen, what are the different types of products, why women are being banished into cow sheds. And we were like, we do live in a patriarchal society, unfortunately. And for the next many generations, men will be taking decisions, very important decisions at the household level. We hope that will change. But even when men are taking decisions or whether women are taking decisions, they need to be informed decisions. And I just feel like we need to give young boys the credit, the due credit, that let's have these conversations first, then let's see the impact of it. So I know that a lot of places are starting with it, but I think right now when I was reading up on the adolescence thing, they were like, with the increase of Manosphere and the impact of it in the UK, we're also seeing a drop in youth centers. We're seeing a drop in mental health counseling for young boys and young men, and suicide rates are really high for young boys.
I also feel that a lot of times uh, we unwittingly ignore and sideline, you know, in our bid to, and personally feel, because I genuinely believe in this term called sustainability, which does not only restrict to the environment or the resources, but also the lens through which you look at development and growth as a whole. So when you do see that there is a vulnerable or a marginalized community that requires more support to rise, you also have to take into account that the people who will be able to truly support them are the ones in power. I don't know how to explain it to you. If women need to come up, then they need to come up in an environment where men are also supportive, educated, they are feeling a part of the conversation. So many times you and I have talked about it. Fathers are not involved, only they don't even know that their daughters have hit puberty, right? In older days, or that they are having problems. Has a father ever given a sex talk to their daughter? Like, in so many instances, this is never like a conversation. Although I need to give credit to my father at 15 or 16 gave me a sex talk, which was very progressive of him. He has been largely in moods and shorts a progressive father. But what I mean to say is that if you constantly look at men and boys from the lens that they are going to be, now the harm has been done for a generation. I'm talking about the new generation that is coming up, right? If you do not take the time to nurture them, if you do not take the time to see that while you are bringing little girls to feel more empowered, to feel bolder, you are making sure that the young boys are not feeling neglected in that process and joining the girls together, it is going to be, again, you're repeating that pattern.
I disagree a little bit on this. I mean, I agree on the larger premise of it, that I do think that we've raised a generation of very competent women, but a lot of that focus has been so much on women that we've sort of been unable to teach men to be okay with stronger women.
Yes.
But I do think there's another sort of hidden layer to this. And if you look at different contexts, whether it's religion, sex, gender, countries, I think there's another layer to it, which is power sharing. And whenever we talk about equity, whenever we talk about, like you said, when we're focusing on one minority group, making sure that they are empowered, we need the others to hold the structures up. I think it's easier said than done. I think there are efforts that do that, but the challenge comes in the nuances of it, when it almost feels like the group, which is the majority group or the power, the quote unquote oppressor group, have to share power in order for the oppressed group to come up. I think that's when the challenges happen, right? And I agree, fundamentally there needs to be focus on both sides to make sure that you are understanding what it means to share power. And I don't think it's about empowering anyone. I think it's about letting them know of being comfortable with what it means to share power.
And I am talking about not the generation that has already been, like, that has already entered the power sphere. To actually start from bottom up, from ground zero, where right now, if a baby is born and he's 2 years old, he doesn't know what sharing of power is. He doesn't even understand whether he's more powerful or not. But if from the beginning you are making excuses for him and neglecting him while, focusing all your attention in, I'll tell you my example, mine and my brother's example, right? If I made a mistake, or if I deviated from the good behavior, or if I deviated from like getting good grades and all that, there was always the shame associated. We did not expect this from you. Why did you do that? And then the punishment. But when it comes to boys, they going and like, doing something deviant, or, something like something mischievous or whatever, even if it is teasing a girl or crossing a boundary, it is always like, ha ha ha, yar, he's a boy. Like there is a little bit of like an expectation that he will do it, and now it's my job to correct.
But that's accountability, no? But that people are trying to make that happen. That's accountability. But we've seen in South Asian households. You tell me, the way people raise girls versus the way people raise boys is very different. Even if you say you have laws to give equal
Yeah.
property, equal love, equal food, accountability and shame is, it's like you're constantly telling a girl there is shame that is attached to your vagina. Anything that you do is at the end of the day coming to that, you and your virginity. You're wearing too revealing of clothes, you're not studying enough and you're going partying, you have guy friends. Where is all of it linked to?
Yeah.
Versus the guy.
So, but if from the beginning, my thing is from the formative years, you create an equal atmosphere where the child, both children are learning that, listen, equal accountability, equal punishment, equal shame attached to whatever wrong behavior, equal appreciation attached to whatever right behavior, encouraging sharing, generally sharing food, sharing activities, sharing clothes, everything, becoming a part of the community. You start doing that, I just feel like you are, I'm not saying you're going to change the world, but it does create, like, these are the things, these are the small solutions that you can work to create a healthy mindset, I feel, and build resilience. Because challenges will come. Right now, it's digital media is the challenge. Tomorrow, something else can be a challenge. Right now, AI is coming in a big way. So many challenges. You have to build resilience.
Oh, I would take it a step further to say that yes, one that's one aspect, but I do think it's always a nature and nurture thing that you go and take forward, right? And when we're talking about nurture, it's not just family dynamics that are nurturing people. There is this nature of these conversations that we're having at home, and that's step one. Because yes, family is the basic unit of society, but we need to understand that I had influences beyond my parents. I don't think like my parents in terms of political views, even though we may be so
But
aligned
that
in
is
many
your
ways.
mental resilience, no, Jesso?
No, that's what I'm saying. There are so many factors beyond it. And I feel like families can support it, but there are influences that we need to
Yeah,
take
so
into consideration.
families, schools, communities, the way you are designing, the way communications are being, like, the way social media is being shaped, the way you're reading, what you're watching, the cartoons that are being introduced, the children's books that are being, everyone has to come together on that basic principle.
Mhm.
It's a very utopian society, but that's why my conclusion is that's why humanities, social sciences, all of these subjects have to be the underlying bedrock of whatever you teach.
I agree. Okay, well, lots to think about. I don't think we started off with the question about what's the answer to the challenges posed by adolescence and our life, which is not honestly not a fiction, but everything that they showed in adolescence is basically real life. I don't think we've come up with an answer, but maybe we've come up with just ways to make sure our contributions are fueling the good for society and not repeating patterns of injustice that we're seeing.
And it's also about the whole thing of breaking the cycle at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was a heavier topic, but we genuinely wanted to talk about it. And see you after
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Bye bye.